Welcome to another episode of Let's Be Perfectly Queer. On tonight's episode, we are switching seats. I am not your host for this evening. I've actually been talked into being interviewed on this edition, and we'll get started with that. I'll introduce my guest host this evening, Kerolos Saleib. Kero, welcome to the show, and thank you very much for taking over the hosting duties tonight.
Thank you for having me on the show, Randy. I enjoyed being on the show the first time around, so this is exciting to be the guest host this time. I'm excited to do that.
I'm glad one of us is excited. Be gentle.
Yeah, I will. I promise. So it's we're here because we want to talk about you and some amazing work you've been doing lately. But before we start all that, I do have a question for you that's been on my mind. You go by the Accidental HIV Activist. Why accidental? Where did that persona come from?
Oh gosh, yeah, I came up with that AKA for myself a few years ago when I began actively talking about my HIV status and disclosing that publicly. And the reason why I thought of Accidental HIV Activist is because it's something that I really do feel I sort of stumbled into. There was no thought really behind the activism and advocacy that I've evolved into doing. It was really by accident. The story is, after moving here to Barrie a little over 3 years ago now, in a field not even close to what I'm doing now, I was in a finance position. I was watching television one evening, our local CTV affiliate, and they were talking about the AIDS walk that year. And that was 2 years into my diagnosis, and I'd never really thought about being part of an AIDS walk or raising money or awareness around HIV. It was just sort of, something that was my crutch to bear, for lack of a better way to put it. But I remember watching the newscast, and they interviewed folks locally who were living with HIV, and all of those individuals felt the need to disguise their voices and hide their faces. And it started to really get me angry that there was no one living in our area that was willing to go on camera and sort of be a face for HIV. Again, at no fault of theirs. I get it. I totally understand the shame, the stigma around living with HIV. But I was at a point in my life that I didn't care anymore. I had the support and the love around me to be confident in disclosing my status. And I said to my then fiance at the time, this can't be what HIV looks like in then 2017. So I phoned a few folks in my family and close friends that I hadn't already disclosed to and made sure they were aware. And then I started publicly talking about living with HIV and what that meant. And it sort of snowballed from there. And so in my mind, it was sort of accidental in the way this all began. And I thought, okay, I'm trying to separate, the personal life and persona of myself and just focus on the activist side. Those obviously have meshed and crossed, and there really is no distinction between the two any longer. I still keep a Facebook page for the Accidental HIV Activist, as well as Instagram and Twitter for social media purposes. But most of what I post on those personas, I also post on my personal page as well. So, that's sort of the story of how that came to be back a few years ago.
And I could totally relate to everything that you're saying right now, because I was diagnosed in 2007, but I also came accidentally to be doing the work that I am doing right now. So I totally get it, but it's interesting because a lot of us that do the work that we are doing today is very much accidental in some one way or another for a lot of us. So thank you for sharing that. But that leads us to this. This is a good segue for my next question for you about an amazing campaign that you started and I got to be a part of as well. And it's called I wrote it down, the I Can Give You campaign. I want to call it movement, actually, because I feel like it's more of a movement. What made you decide to start that movement and get people to want to be involved?
Well, let me first start by thanking you for participating in the campaign or movement, whatever we choose to call it. I really appreciate that. I know not everyone is comfortable in sharing their status publicly. I wasn't concerned that you would say no when I asked you, and I do appreciate that. And it's been wonderful, the response. It's really sort of caught me off guard, quite frankly, the response that I've received around this campaign. And it really, I know it sounds corny, and I hate to tell this story, and my lovely producer Deanne, who convinced me to sit on the other side of the chair and be interviewed for this. I initially said to her, I don't want to do that, certainly not on quote unquote my show, because I don't want this to be about me. This show has always been about, what my guests' message is and what they want to share. It's never been, even though my name is in it, and that had to be for legal reasons. It has to be Let's Be Perfectly Queer with Randy Davis. It's a show for the queer community, initially here in Simcoe, Muskoka, but with COVID, I've loved the fact that we've been able to expand beyond that. But to answer your question, this campaign idea truly did come to me in a dream, as corny as that sounds. And I'm one of those people who I'm sure I probably do dream every evening, but I never remember any dreams that I might have, so I don't feel that I dream. This is one that stuck with me when I woke up. This is a year and a half ago now that it came to me. And I think it all stemmed from, obviously, the U=U campaign, Prevention Access campaign, which was started in 2016 by my hero, my mentor, and I'm proud to say my good friend now, Bruce Richmond in the US, who started the U=U campaign, the message and movement around the fact that those of us living with HIV who are able to have access to medications and treatment and can have a sustained suppressed viral load or an undetectable viral load, therefore are untransmittable. We cannot transmit the virus sexually to partners. And I want to add to that, also women living with HIV who are undetectable cannot transmit the virus to their children, so they can have babies that are born HIV negative. That's an important thing that we don't talk about enough within the U=U movement, but I've been part of a few different campaigns since disclosing my status and speaking openly about my HIV status around, the Can't Pass It On campaign, for example, which is a campaign that both myself and Aaron, my husband, were involved in, that focuses on the fact that I can't transmit HIV to my HIV negative partner. And those are great campaigns, and I'm happy that we have those, and the fact that we can't pass it on, or I can't give you HIV. But I also don't want folks living with HIV to only be valued by their viral load, the amount of virus that's in our blood. So it came to me again in a dream one night. It's, I can't give you HIV, but we don't talk about the things that I, as someone living with HIV, can give to the world, to society, to our community. Yeah. And I think that's an important distinction to make, not taking away from the U=U campaign or the Can't Pass It On campaign, because that is obviously an important aspect of living with HIV that folks need to know, that as someone living with HIV, it is impossible. There is zero risk of my transmitting the virus. But aside from that, I can give a whole lot of other things too, and that's where the idea of coming up with H, I, and V words of what I can give, which isn't always easy to, especially the V is a difficult one. But, I can give you honesty, I can give you integrity, I can give you voice, I can give you humility, I can give you insight, I can give you value. All those things that folks living with HIV can give us. And that's where the concept of the I Can Give You campaign, it's to focus on not only can I not give you HIV, but more importantly, there are so many things that I and others living with HIV can give that we really need to talk about as well, and not focus so much on just my viral load.
I have to admit, when you did ask me, as much as you thought I wasn't going to be hesitant, I was. And it's normal. As a person living with HIV, we have hesitation of where is this going to go? Where is this going to be posted? Who's going to see that? But I know that as an activist myself and person who works in the sector, I had to let go of this. And I think what empowered me about this campaign, Randy, is to see the diversity of people. That's the one thing that was important for me, because a lot of the campaigns out there are very white, cisgender, gay, man dominated. But to see that movement happen that is so inclusive, that was powerful. That's what made me realize that is okay for me to do that. And to see the diversity of those people being able who have cultural, religious influences, socioeconomic influences, to see them being able to express this so openly on social media, that is huge. That is huge. So thank you. Thank you for that.
Well, I appreciate that. That was certainly was my intention in launching this campaign. And while I didn't focus and direct this to any one segment of the population, I started the campaign with a picture of me and my campaign, and just posted it on the U=U Facebook page, which is where I really wanted to sort of see and gauge some of the traction that would happen. Initially, when I first presented this campaign, it was April of last year. I went to my first PLDI, which is a program, the Ontario AIDS Network, Peer Leadership Development Institute. And it's a program for all folks across Ontario living with HIV who want to it sort of fosters leadership within individuals and focuses on the fact that leadership looks different for everyone. You know, my idea of leadership and the things that I do aren't necessarily any good or any better than someone else might do. And one of the last things that we had to do as part of this weekend, of PLDI, I'm losing my words right now, was a group assignment. And it was open. We could do whatever we wanted. We could present a song and dance. We could do a spoken word, whatever we wanted to do. And the group that I was hooked up with had a hard time coming up with, well, what are we going to do? What are we going to do? So I had a visualization of what this campaign would look like, and it's sort of the next iteration that I want to see the campaign grow into in video form. And so we did the campaign in front of a room full of folks living with HIV, where I had my colleagues stand up with me, and we had written on pieces of paper with the HIV in bold print, you know, the things that we can give. And then at the end, we all said, but I can't give you HIV. And that was the first time that I had sort of tested the campaign publicly. And I'm glad I did it in front of a room full of folks living with HIV, because I get emotional even thinking about it. There wasn't a dry eye in the audience afterwards, and the response was just so overwhelming that I had to sort of put it aside for a while, because it was almost too much, and I didn't really know. I knew I wanted to sort of launch it, but I didn't know how, and I hadn't been part of this sector for long enough to really have an idea of what strategies I should or shouldn't be doing behind it. So I shelved it for a while. I had a good friend of mine who was actually at the PLDI with me, who is an amazing marketer, come up with some posters, sort of a strategy behind the I Can Give You campaign. I don't even think we had a name for it at that point. It was just, you know, I think it was more, I can't give you HIV was more, and I didn't like that. I wanted the more positive, I can give you, with the U just being the letter U to sort of mirror the whole U=U movement. Yeah. And Michael Seven came up with an amazing couple of posters around this campaign. And I actually pitched it to the Canadian AIDS Society for last year's National HIV Testing Day. And they had already had a campaign in place, so it was sort of poo-pooed. So we kind of left it, and I still have the PDF forms that Michael sent with some of these posters that he did up, and absolutely beautifully done. And it wasn't until COVID hit, and I had I say I have extra time on my hands, but I think I'm busier now than I was pre-COVID, that I thought, you know, now's the time to kind of launch this and see where it goes. So I did it my own individual poster first and put it out there and got some great response. And then I thought, well, I did a second one of myself and put it out there. And then with that one, encouraged folks to send submissions into me as well. And it's sort of, you know, mushroomed from there. And now I've got folks from every continent on this planet has sent a submission, and other than Antarctica, I haven't reached Antarctica yet, but every other continent I've had folks send in submissions, and oftentimes I get submissions and I get their picture, but no HIV words, and I've got a message back, or I'll get a picture and they'll say, do up the post for me and choose the words. And I'm like, well, that's not the point. I need you to choose the words. This isn't me. This isn't my campaign. This is everybody who participates and makes a submission. It's our campaign, and every single individual chooses their own picture and chooses their own words, because I don't want to, it's not up to me to tell you, for example, that your HIV words should be, honesty, integrity, and virtue, for example. That's what you can give, what you feel you are giving to society and can give to society, and contribute beyond the fact that you can't transmit HIV. So it's been very much targeted to an audience that I need to hear your voice. All I really do, it's not a difficult thing. I go into the Canva program and I choose the font, and I have the little U=U logo that I shrink down depending on the size. And it's just a matter of punching in I can give you whatever the HIV words are, and then I can't give you HIV at the end. So it's not a difficult process. It can be time consuming when I get a bunch at the same time, but it's about the individual that has decided they want to participate. It's their voice being heard. And that's something that I really was intentional about, and want to make sure that it continues that way. This isn't me just coming up with a frame on Facebook that you type your face in and it comes up. It's every individual. Those words are theirs. Whether I've had some criticism from some folks indicating that maybe the words aren't exactly as they should be, or not in the right context. And you know what? I'll type back to somebody and say, did you mean this? And inevitably, if somebody comes up to me and sends me a submission and it may not make sense to me, it's their words. And as long as they all start with H, I, and V, it's not my job to make any judgments.
You don't want to colonize their voices. I like to say it that way. Actually, and that leads to a question that I had. I mean, how with going online, there is the chances and the risk of dealing with online trolls. We love them. We love our online trolls. How do you have you had to handle any situations like this? And have you had to deal with online trolls during this campaign?
Not too much, thankfully. I mean, I have had, again, a few folks, mostly the grammar police, send messages, or they'll type messages actually under the posts. I delete them because this isn't about your comments on someone's grammar. And I send a private message and let them know that, I appreciate what you're trying to do and the idea, because I'm one of the worst people when it comes to grammar. I see something and it's not grammatically correct and I cringe, but that's not the point of this campaign. The point is, the focus is on all these wonderful things that we can give. And if the grammar isn't correct, the meaning behind it and the heart of it is what's really important. And as always, and I find this not just with this campaign, but anything I post around HIV on some of my social media, though there's a bot that comes on and will put something about some herbal remedy that's cured them of HIV. And those, of course, I delete immediately. Or if it's something on the U=U Facebook page that I don't have the administrative power to delete, I flag it so the admins see it. Many times the admins on the page catch it even before I do. So that's great. But yeah, for the most part, I haven't had to deal with too much of that, which has been wonderful.
That's great. That's really great in terms of that, and I'm happy to hear there hasn't been too many online trolls or any in that matter. That's it. Just all of this is so incredible to see the movement from my personal experience from the time I was living with HIV to where we are now. It's incredible. It's absolutely incredible. And giving people voices is so powerful. It allows lived experiences are more valuable than someone who's got a degree in HIV research. Someone who's got an HIV research but isn't living with HIV, it's great. Thank you. But it's very often, I find that giving those individuals these voices is so empowering. Empowerment gives resiliency, which is a huge part of living with HIV. And so this is one of the things that I want to bring up, because the challenge with that U=U campaign, and I hear that often, is that it's kind of still stigmatizes people who are not undetectable. How can you balance that out with this campaign?
Yeah, I mean, that's certainly a criticism that I've heard in the past and continue to hear around the U=U campaign. And I think what we're trying to overcome with that, within the grander scheme of the U=U campaign, is making sure that folks realize that, again, our value is not based on the fact that we have an undetectable viral load. Someone living with HIV who, for whatever reason, isn't able to attain a suppressed viral load still is no risk, really, to anyone else. There's other methods to avoid transmission of HIV, and quite frankly, the transmission of HIV, even if there aren't other barriers in place, it's not an easy infection to transfer to someone else, regardless. So in that respect, we try to focus more on what we call the third U of U=U, and that's the universal access to treatment and care for folks, focusing on the inequities in our healthcare system that see marginalized folks already in another marginalized group who are more at risk for HIV, not given the resources to be able to attain an undetectable viral load. And U=U, I think, is the strongest argument that we have for public health to insist upon that universal access to care. And hopefully that will open up doors, not only for folks living with HIV, but any other illness out there that requires treatment and medication that folks aren't able to get to. The idea of everything that we've put towards COVID right now is wonderful, and those resources are great. Had COVID been an illness that was affecting only a marginalized group like HIV initially was, you wouldn't see that same response. So I think that's an important distinction. And while, again, this campaign does focus on folks who are undetectable, only because the tagline, "I can't give you HIV," I can't honestly say that for someone who does not have a suppressed viral load. There is still a chance of transmission. Those of us who have the privilege of being able to access treatment and care and be undetectable, zero risk. And again, that's the argument, to make sure that all folks living with HIV have access to treatment and care. Because if you truly are saying you want to end the HIV epidemic, that's how you do it. You get folks living with HIV in treatment and care. They become undetectable, and the transmission ends. And it's funny, I had someone just the other day ask me if they could be part of the campaign because they're HIV negative. And I said, well, yes, while you can't give HIV, and I'm sure there's a lot of wonderful things you can do as an ally, this campaign, this movement isn't for you. This is a movement for and by folks living with HIV.
And it's as I'm hearing you talk, and it's like you're reading my mind, because I was thinking, for individuals who are not living with HIV, I've having done campaigns before myself, I understand that some of them want to be part of, but that also, we could talk about PrEP for individuals who don't have a suppressed viral load, for instance, but do have a partner who's HIV negative. The HIV negative partner could go on PrEP, and that thus reduces the chances of HIV transmission. And that's also super important to remember, that there's a few options compared to where we were 10 years ago. It's absolutely incredible to think that there's medicine now that could prevent HIV transmission. Is absolutely incredible. And the science behind the medication today, with very little side effects. And now we have the new injectable once a month that's coming out soon in Canada, which is also great. So the science is developing, and I think that's also been helping a lot of folks be able to be part of the movement, seeing how their lives have changed with medication, how empowered they are, how confident they are as well. So that's absolutely it. It's awesome. It's awesome.
Yeah, and that's why I'm really grateful that the campaign has gone beyond just North America. I knew some of my Canadian friends and folks in the US would climb on board, but this campaign has been launched in France. I had someone reach out to me who is in France who wanted to run the campaign for French-speaking folks. And while I've done one French poster here locally for our friend Kerolos in Toronto, he helped me to get the wording correct for their post. But yeah, this campaign is in France now and doing quite well. And I've been reached out to by folks who want to who see it in Spanish, Italian, and Portuguese as well. So that's the next step. But I mean, folks from Uganda are part of this campaign, Peru, a number of folks from Australia and Thailand, Germany, the Philippines. And again, these are some folks that don't have the same privilege and ease of access that some of us with privilege have here in North America. So I think that's important. And I just want to warn you, I've just gotten a note from our producer that we have 3 minutes left. So if you have anything that you want to wrap up here, now's the time.
I really don't have much more to add to what's already been said today, but I do want to remind the viewers that PrEP is pre-exposure prophylaxis. It's a pill that you take if you're HIV negative and you have, if you're sexually active or you have a partner who's HIV positive, whether undetectable or not, you could take that. And U equals U, it means, go for it, Randy.
Undetectable equals untransmittable.
Exactly. So I'd like to reiterate those what do you call them? when you just anyway, I read those terminologies because it's so important for any viewers who are new or anything watching, so they know. Do your research. There's nothing to fear with HIV. And again, Randy, thank you so much for bringing attention to this. It's I mean, I remember when I saw my posting, I was like, oh my God, that's the picture he chose.
But most of the folks who have submitted have given me their pictures. Others have said, here's 2 or 3, choose one. And I mean, if I have the choice between, a sexy shirtless picture or buttoned up suit and tie, I'm choosing the sexy shirtless every single time. So
it's correlated. It's very correlated. Well, sex and HIV are very correlated. Absolutely. So I totally get it. And sex sells. Hey, it does. So why not?
Well, listen, my friend, I want to thank you very much for hosting the episode and interviewing me this evening. I want to also thank my producer, Deanne, for convincing me to take this on. I was absolutely hesitant, again, because I don't like the focus being on me, despite that I have a show with my name in it. But I am very much appreciative of not only you doing the show today, Kiro, but for being part of the campaign. And we'll have links up on the screen for folks who want to get involved or want more information either around the campaign or U equals U. So again, thank you very much. And thank you for watching another episode of Let's Be Perfectly Queer. Take care, everyone.
Bye.
U equals U.